Well, pleasant good evening, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of the PR Man and the Coach Talking Ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. It's your man, Reggie Roberts, longtime sports observer and 29-year veteran communications executive at NFL headquarters and two of its member clubs, the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm joined by my super cool and talented co-host, Walt the Wizard Williams, who I think may have something to say about that 103-84 beatdown that took place last night in Beantown. We'll get to that in a minute, but how are you, Wizard?
Good to go, buddy. How you doing?
I got a lot to say.
I'm sure.
I got a lot to say about a lot of stuff concerning the NBA, the National Basketball Association, as it were. I got a lot to say.
Me too.
Let's get into this thing before we talk about, Boston's failure last night and how they got run out of their own building. We want to, offer our congratulations to both, the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. I mean, it should be a nice final setting up for Thursday night tip off in Denver to kick off game one of the 2023 NBA Finals. I'm thinking there's all these storylines. Jimmy Butler and Bam and the young guy Martin playing for the Heat, and then for Denver, you got a team that this is the first time they've been in the finals ever. First time they've been 47 years. First time they've been in the finals. Give me your take on the matchup, and is it a matchup you like, matchup you don't like? Who has the advantages? Will the Nuggets come out rusty because they've been sitting for 10 days? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think both teams they have a lot of depth. You just mentioned with the Heat, Martin, Vincent, Lowry, Duncan Robinson has been playing well. Strauss, he can have good games as well. So, there's some good surrounding pieces with Butler and Bam there. And Bam hasn't been as consistent, but he's a guy who can hit that mid range and be a guy who can take over games at times. But the Nuggets they counter with the Joker and Murray as their go-to guys, and then you're talking about surrounding players like Porter Jr., Caldwell Pope. Bruce Brown is shooting the lights out. He's been a defensive stopper throughout his career, and now he's hitting threes on a consistent basis. So I think Nuggets, when you say those names, I think they both have depth. The Nuggets is just a bit I think their talent is a bit higher than Miami. I think their star players are a bit better than Miami star players, and their others are a bit better. So I give the advantage to Denver. I think there's Spoelstra is the better coach. But I think the Heat is a better defensive team, but I think the Nuggets are a better offensive team. And it should be a great matchup. But at the end of the day, I just don't think Miami has any answer for the Joker. Bam, I think he'll play really hard and he's tough, but I think he's just too small, too short. And they don't have depth at that position. They try to go small and go small ball, and I think the Joker will eat that alive. So I think they're just going to have problems with him every game. I don't think there's an answer for him, and so he's going to be able to create open opportunities for Denver on a consistent basis.
It's interesting you said. We'll talk about that just a little bit more. I saw some interesting comments, and I think the American public's about to get introduced to two coaches who are really, really special in their own right. I think Mike Malone is good a coach that nobody knows who he is because by the time the East Coast sees his team, everybody in the bed, okay, because they play in Denver. I mean, this guy is solid. He's a good coach. The Nuggets are 10 deep. They pull that first starting five off. You got those other guys that you mentioned. Porter Jr., Caldwell Pope, all those guys who, Brown shooting the lights out. But I think the interesting thing that the most interesting thing I saw last week was something that Coach Malone said about the Joker. He said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, Wizard. He said 4 years ago when we drafted him in the second round, we're at Summer League, we're in Vegas. Here's a guy who's 6'11", maybe 7 feet, 300 pounds, woefully out of shape, overweight. We thought, he might develop into a nice role player, but no one predicted this guy was going to be a two-time NBA MVP. And if you ask some people, might have should have won it this year. Okay. Nobody thought he was going to work himself into the player that he's become. And then with Jamal Murray and the way they played, I mean, they might be one of the most interesting, coolest stories of the NBA season this year.
Yeah, the thing for me is that those others, man, that's what make his game go to another level. He's one of the better passers in the league. And what I mean by that is that just not his ability to find guys, but his timing of his passes as well. He's a quick pass out of those double teams. And because he's so quick and he doesn't have that normal half a second hesitation to try to score first before he passes it, it allows his shooters, the spot shooters, to have that half a second. Now, in the league, you get that 1-2, that left-right if you're right-handed, or that right-left if you're left-handed, with your footwork to get your shot off. That's what happens at the college level. But in the NBA, guys are so long and they're quick, they cover ground so much quicker, you don't have that time to get that footwork in, so the release has to be a lot quicker. But Joker, the way he passes the ball so fast, he takes you back to college. He allows his shooters to have that left, right in their footwork. And so it's almost like shooting drills out there, He takes away the game speed for those spot shooters because how fast he passes the ball out of double team. So that's a huge advantage that he has. That's a little subtle thing in the game. So I think what Miami has to do is the timing of their double teams. Try to time when he's passing the ball out of those double teams and try to get a rhythm on that and try to affect that first pass out of the double team. But that's an intricate thing. That's very hard to do. And, that's just one of the big advantages, one of the subtle big advantages that Joker brings to the table.
Well, you played in the league a long time, 11 years, played a lot, scored a lot of points on some really good teams. You out there, I know you was doing your thing out in Sacktown. You played for a few other teams. Tell me this, how hard are the media, and specifically guys like us who talk about this for a living, are we making too much of that layoff? Are we making too much of it, or will there be some rust on Denver when they tip it off on Thursday night?
Well, I mean, it depends on the makeup of your team and the mindset, For the most part, vets, they need a little bit of rest, man. Their body is older. They need that rest. Time off don't really affect the vets as much because they just know the game. They've been doing it for so long. Young boys, they get distracted with time. So, you tend to want them to get right back out there, and they don't need as much rest. They can bounce back a lot quicker. The dominant go-to guys and other guys that can take over, is about those guys being affected. So the practice is not like the game. The sense of urgency that you play with, that the opposition play with, and that you got to respond to, you cannot replicate that in a practice. So in terms of a rhythm, the Heat is going to be in rhythm. Denver is not. It's going to take them a minute. Now, how long that takes, we'll see. This is a very talented team. It could take one quarter. It could take a half. It could take the whole game. It might be game 2 before they get back into the rhythm. So it's just a matter of the makeup of the team and what their resiliency is. But I believe it could take a minute, In my opinion, I think they will be. If it's 10 days, 10, 11 days, that's a long time to be off in between games. And so I think it will affect them, especially in the first half. But, they're going to be in Denver. That part can affect Miami as well. The altitude, that is real, believe it. And
right.
So I think that might balance things out and help Denver in the second half of the game. But I think at least early on, that layoff will affect the Nuggets.
I'm with the PR man, the coach talking ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive into the post-mortem of that beatdown last night at the Garden. I mean, the Celtics, as everybody knows, fought their way back from 0-3, tied it at 3. And, I know that's a tough mountain to climb. But to me, that game went out the window when your best player rolled his ankle on the other guy's foot, and he's not the same guy. That game was over for all intents and purposes when Jason Tatum got hurt.
And I mean, that is just so unfortunate that it ends like that. I mean, virtually that was it. Just like you said, Reggie, that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
I mean, sometimes, it depends. Sometimes the degree, severity of the sprain, you could tell Tatum could barely put pressure on it. He was hobbling the whole game, and when that happens, it affects every part of your game. You can't beat people off the dribble as good. It affects the way you going up to shoot your jump shot. Defensively, you kept seeing that they would switch and ISO him, and guys would just consistently beat him off the dribble, and so it affected every facet of the game for him, and that's for him individually. Now you're talking about in unison with 4 other guys. You're only as strong as your weakest link, and when one link breaks down like that, it breaks down the whole team. And so it was a tremendous effect on both ends of the court. To be able to lose somebody like him. You look at the Celtics shot 39% from the field as opposed to the Heat shooting 49%, and the Heat shot 50% from the 3-point line, and Boston 21.5%. So that's the difference right there, their ability to score. When you take away their best player, you're not surprised at those type of statistics.
Well, it's interesting. You brought up something I wanted to. It kind of segues nicely, and something I want to get into. Early in the year, let me preface my next statement. I thought Joe Mazzulla took a lot of abuse today on Sports Talk Radio and on ESPN and on Fox when I was watching a little bit of the TV and in the press. I thought he took a lot of abuse when you look at the guy's body of work from the start of the season. Like let's just break it down. This guy was a career assistant, and he found out 3 days before the 2023 season started that he was going to be the coach of the Boston Celtics. He's part of the team that went to the finals last year with Coach Udoka. Coach Udoka's situation has been well documented. We don't need to discuss it here. But he found out 3 days before the 22-23 camp started, he's going to be the head coach. What did he do? He took that same team that went to the NBA Finals. He took them to within 60 minutes of their second straight NBA Finals after being down 0-3 in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think he deserves a medal for that, for having those guys playing. They kept playing. They didn't quit. They didn't quit on him. And then, my sense is based on the way Jason Tatum had been playing, I submit to you that he was probably going to give y'all a 30-piece had he not injured his ankle based on how he played during the series.
So you have it right there. We wouldn't even be talking about Coach.
Wouldn't be talking. So for him to take as much grief as he took, I say stand down and you can lose me and miss me with all that garbage, because that's what it is. It's just garbage.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you lose your best player, and sometimes, like I was mentioning earlier, sometimes you roll your ankle, you take that thing up, you start moving and get warmed up, and you can roll on it. And get going, and for that game you can get back. But you could tell the severity of his ankle sprain. I mean, his foot hit the ground when it rolled. The side of it hit the ground, and so he was just hobbling out there. He was on one leg.
Right.
So I mean, I would have liked to see if he would have played healthy and finished that game. And then, hey, whatever criticisms comes after that, for me, it's not even about the season. I think that, the bar was really high because of Udoka, his first season as well, where he took him. I just thought the bar was really high, right? And so I thought that Mazzulla, he was right there. He came right behind him, right there, virtually on the same spot. And then you tell me he, especially coming from 3-0 down, and if they would have just had that opportunity to play with their best player there, I mean, I just would have liked to have seen that. And then whatever criticism you have after that is what it is then. But with your best player out, I think all of the criticisms that he's receiving right now is unwarranted. They were up and down throughout the regular season and throughout the playoffs, but they got there. Sometimes you can go straight there. Sometimes you take the windy road, but just get there. That's it. And
absolutely.
So he was right there, man. And
traffic winding road. I see you. Okay, okay. Well, he said something that I kind of disagree with from perspective. And I think they're going to spend the whole offseason, specifically the summer, kind of talking about this. He was talking about earlier in the year. He said the 3-point attempt is the most important stat in the game of basketball. It's a much. He said it after a loss when they played Brooklyn in March, and he said because he said the 3-point shot is important because of the pace of play, because of shot selection, and because of the ability to go on runs. Now, here's where I kind of disagree with the coach. Now, let me just preface my remarks. I'm not a basketball coach, nor do I play one on TV. But here's what I think. Okay, and you alluded to this early. Okay, Boston shot 21% from three. They were 9 of 42 in a game 7 loss where they got their backs blown out. Okay, they were 7 of 35 in game 6 that they won, but they were lucky to win that game. Okay. Okay. Whereas the Heat shot 50% from three last night. I think one of the things that they got to look at this offseason is they got to go find a true point guard. They got to find another scorer because, having the ball with your two wings are your two best players, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with all due respect to Jaylen Brown, who's a phenomenal player, all world player, his handle hadn't gotten any better. Turned the ball over 8 times last night. He doesn't handle the ball that well. And I think I think coaches picked up on that. I know that he picked up on it, and they kind of force him to a bunch of turnovers. They gotta get another scorer, and they got to get a point guard. They got to get a true point guard to help them, because the way they're doing it now and relying on the three, I think what happens is you go 38-2 when you win, when you shoot 40% from three, but you go 30-32 when you don't. That's not good odds, especially having your 2 worst games in the Eastern Conference Finals. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree that the point guard has to be somebody who, at the very least, make the game easier for others. So that when you're talking about Tatum and Brown, where the bulk of the offense is coming from, you don't want them to have the ISO all game. You want them to chill sometimes, and a guard break the defense down and just kick, and they catch and shoot, things like that to a high degree. Not just setting it up and, just putting in that work. Just getting a bucket every time that wears you down, and we want those guys to have much more energy in the fourth quarter for both ends, defensively and offensively. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about Jaylen Brown, his ability to handle the ball. They just force him to turnovers. He's a guy that can get to his spots and elevate over top, but just creating with his handles, he's not as good with that. And so he's going to struggle when he play against a good defender, especially that's reaching at that ball. And so that's going to cause him problems. You can see he didn't feel comfortable out there in that environment, and I think people zoned in on that. But I think that go away if you have a point guard who does the bulk of the handling and could just get him the ball in positions where he can go and make moves or just catch and shoot, rather than having to set up ISOs in the bulk of his touches and creating that way.
Got it. You know what was it? We were talking about this today. Somebody asked me this: is Spoelstra one of the best coaches in the NBA history? I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. I mean, anybody who let's look at it. The Heat are on their way to trying to win their 4th championship. And he put on a little bit of a clinic. They got down. I mean, yesterday they made some adjustments to kind of ISO on Jaylen Brown. They forced a bunch of turnovers. They played really well together. I mean, I think Spoelstra kind of put on a clinic, especially in Game 7.
Well, you know what? He has 2 championships as a head coach. He has one as an assistant coach. He's been a co-coach of the year. I mean, this dude has the most postseason wins in the Heat's history, the most regular season wins, highest win percentage in both. So it's not a longevity thing. It's this dude gets it done. And I think that it goes back to my days when I played at Miami, and this dude used to have himself locked in that room as a videographer and making videotapes for guys. I think during that time frame, he was a very hard worker. He did not take it for granted, even though he was trying to move up the ladder. He was working hard, man, and you knew that you can ask him any question about any player, and he knew everybody's tendencies. So you take that right there, and you turn that person into a coach, especially a head coach. You just don't forget those things. You telling me that as a head coach, you know naturally all of these different guys' tendencies from the film work that you put in. I believe that gives you a serious advantage when the guy at the top knows these things already and don't have to be taught this from an assistant watching the video and saying, okay, hey, this guy likes to do that and this and this. You have a certain knowledge of yourself. I already know what he likes to do. You know, what else do you, is there something that you can bring to the table that I don't know? So that's what I would imagine that Spoelstra, his sessions, his coaching sessions look like, and that's not the normal way that goes. And so I would guess that he has a serious advantage on that respect. He's a guy that makes adjustments throughout, and I think once again, I think it goes back to his roots and being a videographer, man, and understanding, watching film, just breaking down film on not only individuals, but what was the turning point of games and what made that run happen, and all of these things happen from the film work that he had put in, the groundwork that he was laying in the beginning. So it doesn't surprise me that he has success at this level because he was very serious about the videos. And like I said, he knew everyone's tendency. I mean, you can literally ask him about anyone, and he knew what that guy's tendencies were.
Finishing up on the PR Man, the coach, talking ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Was it? You know, there's a lot of talk out there, specifically in Boston, and it's this obviously isn't the time to do this. There's all this talk about they got to break up Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, those are two of the best players. They play good together. They've gotten deep into the playoffs. You know, I'm not sure breaking them up is the answer, but that seems to be sort of a prevailing theory in Boston and across the NBA today. Maybe it's because they lost and the loss is still fresh. What are your thoughts on how they sort of go about their business this summer?
Hey, it all depends. You know, if you talking about trading a guy like Brown, what are you getting in return? I know when you have a guy like Jason Tatum on your team, there's no time for rebuilding. It's championship right now. You know, you have to bring a championship caliber team right now, and it can't be a guy who's projected to be good in a little bit, and then you get some future draft. No, that's not going to work when you have a Jason Tatum on your team. I don't think you can come to him and say, okay, we're going to get rid of a Jaylen Brown, which make us a championship caliber team, and then rebuild for another 2-3 years and see if we can come retool and come back. I don't think Jason Tatum will be in favor of that. So it depends on who you're going to bring to the table. And don't forget Jaylen Brown, he does it on both ends. He's a good defensive player as well as creating his own shot. So, I mean, I heard mentions of Damian Lillard. I think if you talk about a player like that, okay, yeah,
yeah, okay, Dame Dollar, right?
We're gonna have to talk about this right here.
Deal at that point.
Yeah, that's a done deal for me. So to me it depends. He's a guy, like I said, you can't build for the future when you have a Jason Tatum there. I think that you come back retool. If you get a point guard that can create, I think that makes Jaylen Brown a better player in playoff time.
Finishing up with the PR man and the coach talking ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Let's get your prediction for the 2023 NBA Finals. I mean, I think you're right. I think the layoff's going to affect Denver a little bit, but I think you're also right about that altitude because you played that out. What's that like the first time you go do that playing out there in Denver when playing in that altitude? What's that like?
Oh man, if you ever knew someone with hair on their chest, and then just imagine like lighting a match to it.
It's like that.
We're like, oh man, it's horrific, man. I mean, you feel like you can't breathe at all, like you're not going to be able to catch your breath. And at some point you get that second wind, but I mean, man, until that comes, it's exhausting out there, and so it takes some getting used to. And at the same time, I think that the layoff on the Nuggets, I don't think it'll be more so the shape, what kind of shape you're in, but the rhythm of the game. I think that of the game. Guys are so physical and are so athletic and so long that they can affect shots. And so, but you'll see guys making contested shots on a regular basis, and that's because of the practice of being in games regularly in games and getting used to that rhythm. And they've been off a long time. And like I said earlier, practice is not the game, so they're gonna have to get used to that rhythm. And it's gonna be interesting to see how long it takes. Sometimes it could take a quarter or a half. Before you catch a rhythm and get back to it. So this team is very talented. I wouldn't guess that it would take a long time. And I think that the Nuggets are the better team, and I think they are better by a bit of a margin. And so I think that they win this 4-1.